Welcome. We're diving deep into some fascinating stuff, especially how it all connects to Jesus Christ and Christianity.
Always up for a good deep dive, especially into a topic this layered.
We're coming at it from all angles today. We'll be looking at David Hawkinse' work, like calibrating those consciousness levels and then seeing how that applies to, well, the Bible itself.
Sounds like we might uncover some surprises along the way. I'm intrigued.
Oh, definitely some surprises. I was reading Hawkinse, and honestly, it kind of blew my mind.
What was it that struck you the most?
Muscle testing. He talks about actually using it to figure out, if a statement is true or not. I mean, how does that even work? It sounds wild.
It's about seeing our bodies as these incredibly sensitive instruments. They're picking up on these subtle energy shifts all the time, even if we don't consciously realize it.
Okay, I'm following. So what Hawkinse is suggesting is that our muscles, they actually react differently to truth and lies.
Exactly. Think of it like a built-in lie detector test. It's tapping into a deeper kind of knowing.
So it's not just about what I personally believe, right? It's about accessing some, universal truth, one that goes beyond my own limited view.
You got it. It's about tapping into a field of consciousness that connects us all.
And Hawkinse takes it even further. He gives these numerical values to different levels of consciousness. It's like emotions, attitudes, even whole belief systems get a number. It's fascinating, but man, it's complex.
Totally. What's important to remember with those calibrations, though, is they're not meant to be judgments. It's not saying this one's better than that one.
Gotcha. So it's more like recognizing those different states of consciousness. They just vibrate at different energetic frequencies.
Exactly. And that leads us into some of the, well, let's say more controversial parts of Hawkins' work. He took that calibration system and applied it to, get this, the world's major religions.
Whoa, okay. Yeah, I remember when I first read that. How can you possibly put a number on something as massive and, deeply personal as religion?
I had the same reaction. It felt a little, I don't know, disrespectful maybe, like trying to measure faith with a ruler.
Right.
But I think it's crucial to understand where Hawkins was coming from. He wasn't saying this religion is the best or anything like that.
So what was he saying then?
He was suggesting that over time, those original religious teachings, they can get, well, misinterpreted. Sometimes they even get, how do I say it, twisted to serve power struggles.
So even if those original teachings are really high, the way they're practiced or understood, that could decline over time, and that would lower their overall truth level.
Exactly. And get this, it even happens within a single religion. For instance, he calibrated different books of the Bible.
No way. Really?
Yeah. Some, like the Gospels, they calibrated really high, but others, like Leviticus, were lower.
Whoa, this is where things get really interesting, isn't it? I mean, if you take that at face value, it sounds like he's saying some parts of the Bible are more true than others, but that doesn't seem to line up with, traditional Christian teachings.
Yeah, and this is where people sometimes misinterpret Hawkins. He's not saying any book in the Bible is worthless or anything. He's just pointing out they were written in different contexts that each had a specific purpose,
And remember, Jesus himself didn't seem all that bothered by hierarchies. He hung out with people from all walks of life, challenged those religious authorities, always emphasized love and compassion above all else.
And those qualities, the love, the compassion, the forgiveness, that's what calibrates at those highest levels of consciousness. That's what Hawkins found. So even if some books in the Bible would calibrate lower, they still contribute to the overall understanding of Christianity. They give context and historical background.
Like the book of Revelation, for example, talk about intense. It's packed with that symbolic language and apocalyptic imagery, but it's still a sacred text for a lot of Christians.
Right. And it was written by John, the same John who wrote the Gospel of John, which, by the way, calibrates much higher. So even though Revelation comes from a more symbolic, some might even say astral perspective, it's still a valid part of the Christian tradition.
So how do we reconcile these ideas? They seem kind of conflicting. We've got the calibration of different books, then the overall message of love and unity, and then the historical context they were written in. How does it all fit together?
I think it comes down to recognizing the Bible as this collection of writings. It's complex. It's not just a set of strict rules.
Right.
And at the end of the day, the most important thing isn't the literal meaning of every single verse, but that overarching message. The one about love and transformation that Jesus really embodied.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like looking past the surface to find those deeper truths that connect us all.
Exactly. And that's where the archaeological evidence comes in. It gives us a whole other layer of understanding, a new way to approach this whole truth question. Have you ever heard of P52?
Oh, yeah. It's that fragment from the Gospel of John. It's like the oldest piece of the New Testament we have, right?
You got it.
I remember reading about it. It goes all the way back to the 1st century. It's mind-blowing that something that old still exists.
It really is, and it's a game changer, too. For years, some scholars argued that the Gospel of John was written way later, too late to be a reliable account of Jesus' life. But P52 throws that theory right out the window.
So we have physical proof that people were talking about Jesus, even writing about him while he was alive. That's huge.
It changes everything. It shows how fast Christianity spread in those early days. And it gives the Gospels this extra layer of authenticity.
And what about that Alexamenos Scofido? That one stuck with me because it shows how much those early Christians were ridiculed, all because of what they believed.
Absolutely. It's a powerful reminder. It's a carving from Rome, shows a crucified figure, but with a donkey's head.
Ouch.
It was meant to mock those early Christians who believed in a crucified God. Straight up mockery.
Makes you think, our own culture, sometimes it misunderstands and mocks what we believe in too. But just like those early Christians, we're called to stand strong in our faith, even when it's not popular.
Couldn't agree more. They faced serious persecution, those early Christians. And the fact that they held on to their faith that strongly with all that adversity really speaks volumes about the power of their convictions.
Yeah. It's like their faith was forged in fire.
And there's another detail that supports the historical accuracy of the Gospels, the naming conventions. Especially in the Gospels, they perfectly match the patterns of first-century Judea.
Really? I never thought about that.
They used nicknames and, qualifiers, Simon called Peter or James the son of Zebedee.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's one of those things you wouldn't pick up on unless you were deep into the history. Someone trying to fake a document centuries later wouldn't have gotten those details right. It's like a hidden signature that proves the text is authentic.
So we have muscle testing, ancient manuscripts, even the way people were named. They all point to the true and accuracy of the Bible. It's like solving a puzzle. The more we discover, the clearer the picture becomes.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about this whole process. There's always more to uncover, more to explore. But even with all this evidence, it's important to remember that truth isn't just about facts and figures. There's something deeper at play.
It's about connecting with a truth that touches our hearts, something that goes beyond just our minds.
Exactly. And that's where the teachings of Jesus come in. Even if we put aside the calibrations, the historical evidence, all the theological debates, we're still left with this message, one of love, compassion, and forgiveness. It's a message that's resonated across cultures and time.
And that message, all by itself, speaks to its truth.
It really does. It's a message that keeps challenging us, inspiring us, and transforming us, even today. It really is incredible when you think about it, how those teachings of Jesus have lasted for, over 2,000 years.
It's mind-blowing, and across so many different cultures and beliefs. But I got to be honest, sometimes I get tripped up trying to, reconcile those teachings with some of the harsher stuff in the Old Testament.
Yeah, that's a struggle a lot of people have. And it's where that whole idea of calibrating consciousness can be really helpful, Remember, Hawkins wasn't trying to judge the Bible or any other religious text. He was just observing that, they resonate at different frequencies.
So even if parts of the Old Testament seems harsh, or maybe even judgmental to us now, they still had a purpose in the bigger picture of the Bible's message.
Exactly. They reflect the consciousness of the time when they were written. And it's key to remember that the Bible, it's like this progressive revelation. The New Testament, it builds on the foundation of the Old Testament, but it also brings in this new covenant, one of love and grace through Jesus.
So it's like we're seeing how human consciousness evolved right there in those texts.
That's a really interesting way to put it. And Hawkins actually believed that humanity's consciousness is still evolving, that we're moving towards a higher level of awareness.
That's a hopeful thought, especially with everything going on in the world right now. But if that's true, how does individual consciousness impact the collective?
Well, Hawkins thought that even a small increase in individual awareness could have a ripple effect, influencing the collective consciousness of everyone. He described it as a rising tide lifting all boats.
So if enough people embrace those qualities, love, compassion, forgiveness, it can actually steer human history towards, more peace and understanding. Wow, that's powerful.
It is. It lines up perfectly with what Jesus taught about love's power to change the world. Remember that line? He said, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another."
That's beautiful. But it also feels so, challenging, especially in today's world. There's so much division and conflict everywhere.
I hear you. It's a tall order for sure. But it's also incredibly important. Hawkins believed that as humanity's consciousness evolves, we're going to gain a deeper understanding of spirituality and the divine. We might even see a shift away from those traditional religious structures, maybe even a move towards a more direct experience of the sacred.
That resonates with me. I've always felt that true spirituality, it's not about dogma or rituals. It's about connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that divine spark, both within us and in everything around us.
So how do we cultivate that awareness, that connection to the divine? Hawkins talks about meditation being key, but he also stresses things like willingness, humility, and forgiveness.
All of those help us get past the ego. And the ego, well, that's often the biggest roadblock to spiritual growth. See, the ego wants to control, to judge, to separate us from others. But true spirituality, it's about letting go, embracing unity, recognizing our interconnectedness with everything.
Sounds like a lot of inner work is needed to reach those higher levels of consciousness that Hawkins talks about.
It is. It's a lifelong journey, and there are no shortcuts. But it's so worth it. The rewards are, well, immeasurable. More peace, more joy, a deeper sense of purpose that transcends the ups and downs of life. And it all starts with cultivating those qualities Jesus embodied: love, compassion, forgiveness.
You know, before we started this deep dive, I was kind of skeptical about this whole muscle testing thing. But listening to you explain it, it makes a lot of sense. Like our bodies are this direct line to a deeper truth, a truth that our minds can't always grasp.
It's a fascinating concept, right? And even though it might seem a little out there, more and more evidence is showing up that our bodies react to truth and falsehood in ways we can actually measure.
But if anyone can use muscle testing, how do we know if we're, calibrated high enough to get accurate results?
That's a really important question. Hawkins says that the tester needs to calibrate above 200, that's the level of integrity, to get readings that are reliable. And the intention behind the testing, that has to be pure, like a genuine desire for truth, not trying to prove a point or manipulate anything.
So if someone's still operating from a lower level of consciousness, they might get skewed readings or maybe misinterpret what they're getting.
That's right. It's like trying to use a sensitive instrument without knowing how to handle it properly.
So we've got to approach these tools with humility and careful judgment. And remember that in the end, the most reliable guide is our own inner compass. That feeling of knowing that comes from deep inside.
Absolutely. We can use tools like muscle testing and calibration as guides, sure, but we should always check in with our intuition, that sense of what feels true to us, what aligns with our values.
That reminds me of something Jesus said. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. It's like a warning to be discerning, to not just blindly follow anyone, no matter how charming or convincing they might seem.
That's a great connection, and it highlights how important it is to cultivate our own inner wisdom, our ability to separate truth from falsehood.
And to remember that the journey to truth, it's a personal one. It's unique for each individual.
Exactly. There's no single path that works for everyone, but there are these universal principles, these qualities of being that can guide us along the way. And those are the very qualities that Jesus embodied and taught: love, compassion, forgiveness, and above all, a deep connection to the divine.
Thinking about this whole journey of evolving consciousness, it's inspiring, sure, but it's also kind of daunting. If we're all on this path, how do we even start to, recognize those negative patterns, those limiting beliefs that hold us back? It can be so sneaky.
You're so right. Those patterns can be really deep-rooted. But being aware of them, that's the first step. Once you see a pattern, you can start questioning it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Ask yourself, is this belief even true? Or is it just something I've always been told, something I've been conditioned to believe?
So it's about challenging those assumptions, those default ways of thinking that we pick up from our families, our culture, even our own past experiences.
Exactly. It's about realizing we actually have the power to choose our thoughts, choose our beliefs, and create a reality that's more in line with, what's best for us.
But sometimes it feels like those negative patterns have a mind of their own. It's like they keep pulling us back into those old ways of thinking and acting, even when we know better.
And that's where forgiveness comes in. Hawkins talks about how unforgiveness is like, drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Whoa.
It's a powerful image, right? And it really drives home the point that holding on to anger and resentment, it only hurts us in the end.
So forgiveness isn't about saying what someone did was okay. It's not letting them off the hook. It's about freeing ourselves from that burden of anger and resentment.
Exactly. It's recognizing that we're all on our own journeys. We all make mistakes along the way.
That's way easier said than done, though, especially when someone's really hurt you, deeply hurt you. How do you even begin to forgive in those situations?
I know, it's tough, but it's so crucial for healing and growing. Sometimes it takes a shift in perspective.
Okay, what do you mean?
Instead of seeing the other person as this like enemy, try to see them as a fellow traveler on the journey, someone who's also struggling and learning.
It's like what Jesus said on the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He offered compassion even to the people who were crucifying him.
Exactly. And that's the level of consciousness Hawkins was talking about. That level of love and understanding, it goes beyond the limitations of our human ego.
It seems almost superhuman. But I guess that's what makes Jesus such a powerful example, right? He showed us it's possible to embody that level of awareness, even in the face of so much suffering.
He did, and he taught us that the path to real peace, to real freedom, it's about surrendering to a higher power, to the will of God.
Yeah.
And I know that word surrender, it can be a bit loaded, right? It makes people think of weakness or giving up, but that's not what Hawkins means.
So what does it mean then, to surrender in a spiritual sense? Does it mean giving up all your own desires, your ambitions?
Not really. It's more about aligning your will with the will of, something bigger. It's about letting go of the ego's need to control everything. It's about trusting that there's something guiding you, supporting you, something greater than yourself.
So trusting that there's a bigger plan, a higher purpose, one that we might not always be able to see clearly from where we are now.
Exactly. And when we surrender to that higher purpose, everything becomes easier. Our actions flow effortlessly. We're not driven by fear or ego anymore. It's like tapping into this source of wisdom and power that's always been there. All we had to do was let go and trust.
Sounds like we're all on this incredible journey, a journey of spiritual evolution. But we get so caught up in the everyday struggles that we forget about the bigger picture.
That's why it's crucial to have those practices that keep us connected to that deeper truth, to that inner wisdom that guides us. It might be meditation, prayer, spending time in nature, even just taking a few minutes to be still and quiet, connect with your heart. These things, they nurture our spiritual growth.
And they remind us that we're not alone, that there's a higher power, a divine presence always there with us, guiding us, supporting us every step of the way.
Exactly. And the more we connect with that presence, the more we realize that everything happens for a reason. Even the tough times, they're chances to grow and learn.
That's a beautiful way to look at things. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you really want listeners to walk away with? What's the key takeaway?
I hope they remember that truth can be approached from so many different angles, through science, through history, through spiritual exploration. And at the end of the day, the most important truth is the one that resonates in their heart, the one that connects them to their own divinity and to the divine presence that flows through all of creation.
This has been an amazing journey. Exploring these ideas with you, I feel like my understanding of truth, of consciousness, even of the teachings of Jesus, has grown in ways I couldn't have imagined.
And that's what these deep dives are all about, right? Going beyond the surface, beyond our assumptions. It opens us up to new possibilities, new ways of seeing the world and our place in it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into truth, consciousness, and the historical accuracy of the Bible. Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.